Hello and bonjour, and welcome to the second and therefore almost certainly the last episode in my series about high-speed test tracks that were built on top of factories in the 1920s. And you join me in the beautiful Belgian city of Liège, where I'm about to catch a suburban train from an extremely colourful station and head out to a small village about 20 minutes east of here. Because in the last video, we visited the famous Lingotto circuit in Turin, the only 1920s factory rooftop test track that still survives as a functioning circuit. But as you know, there used to be two more. One in Buenos Aires in Argentina, that has now been converted into a block of flats, and one that is abandoned and derelict in a place called Nessonvaux in eastern Belgium. So, I've come to Nessonvaux. This is Nessonvaux, about 20 minutes east of Liège, in the valley of the river Vesdre. It's a fairly small place, with just under 1,000 people living here, but historically it was the home of the famous Belgian car company Impéria, or as the locals pronounce it, Impéria. And if you've never heard of Impéria, that's probably because they went bust in 1958. But they were once the biggest car company in Belgium, and nearly 7 decades after their demise, you can still climb up the same little hill where that photo was taken from and look down on the old abandoned factory. Or at least you could if there weren't 7 decades of trees in the way. So, I'm going to level with you. It's not the greatest view of a thing that you're ever going to see, but you can just about make out through the trees the banking of the track, and then it goes over the roof of the factory here, and you can see the old watchtower here. And in the past, that loop would have continued all the way out here and back again to there. Right, I think we can do better than that, so I'm going to head down to the factory gates and see if we can get a clearer view from there. Now, I've seen a few videos online of people who've seemingly just managed to wander in and walk around. But I've also read some articles more recently saying that the factory has been bought up by developers and they're going to turn it into blocks of flats, accommodation, I think. So, who knows what we're going to find? We may find that it's all open, we may find that it's all sealed off, may even find that it's a construction site. But yeah, we're just going to go down there and see what's happening, basically. Investigative journalism. And with my investigative journalist hat on, I think this looks like the beginnings of the old factory. Now, we already know why Fiat built a factory with a test track on the roof, but why did Impéria build a factory with a test track on the roof? Well, the truth is, they didn't. The factory was originally built without a test track by a company called Piper, who started life as an arms manufacturer, but in 1895 they invented a new kind of motor that ran on a combination of benzol and electric batteries, and after that they switched to making cars instead. In other words, they were making hybrid vehicles here in the late 1890s. But unfortunately for Piper, no one was going to want to buy hybrid vehicles until the late 1990s, and before long, they gave up on the whole making cars idea and sold the factory to Impéria, who moved in 1907. And to be clear, at this point, there is no test track. In the early days, Impéria would simply run their cars along the streets of Nessonvaux. But then, one day in 1928, 20 years after they moved in, and 5 years after Fiat built Lingotto, someone here turned around and said, "You know what this factory needs?" Right, let's be honest, compared to the flashy purpose-built facilities at Lingotto and in Buenos Aires, this was very much the budget option of the 1920s rooftop test track world. But then, after all, Why spend all that money on a whole new factory when you could just take your existing one, slap a circuit on top of it, and it will do more or less the same job? It meant they could test all their cars on site at the factory. They didn't need to buy any extra land to build a separate circuit, and they did it all at a fraction of the price that it cost Fiat and Chrysler. So in the days when the factory was working, the cars would have... Hang on, they would have been going that way around. So they would have come along here, along what is now a gravel path. I guess back then would have been all tarmac. Onto this bit here. Yeah, you can see here, there's a little bit of the tarmac still remaining. And then that would have led up to the banking, which is just behind the wall here. Curves round, up over the factory, and then curves round down the back of the factory, back on the ground again, round the back of this building, and then there would have been a big loop at the far end, and it would come back again this way. For 30 years, Impéria tested their newly built cars on this test track, and they also assembled cars here for other manufacturers, including Standard, Triumph and Alfa Romeo. But by the 1950s, the company was really beginning to struggle in an increasingly global market. They were pretty much the last survivors of the once great Belgian car industry, and in the end, they didn't make it either. In August 1958, Impéria closed the factory gates for one final time. But what exactly is happening to this historic site? After all, it's now 66 years after the factory closed, and it seems like no one's really done anything about it. So what have we got here? Clearly a demolition company is forbidden to enter the building site, and we do not accept any responsibility in case of any accidents on the building site. So I guess I can't go in. The site is now owned by a company called Lamy Construction, and I found an article online saying they're planning to demolish the old buildings and stick up some houses instead, but they're going to preserve the historic test track as a special feature. However, even though the signs look like they were put up recently and I'm here in what should be the middle of a working day, there is no one around and nothing seems to be happening. Until a few years ago, there used to be a little museum in one corner of the site run by local volunteers. But very sadly, that got wiped out by the devastating floods of 2021. They managed to save the cars, but the building was wrecked and they had to shut down. And I'm guessing those floods may be one reason why the redevelopment hasn't happened yet. But unfortunately, there's absolutely no one here who I can ask about it, so I give up on being an investigative journalist. It's far too difficult. If any of you watching this actually know what's happening, please do let us all know in the comments. And meanwhile, if you'd like to visit Nessonvaux, it is a 20-minute ride on the train from Liège-Guillemins station, which has direct connections to Brussels, Paris and Germany. And if you're more of a car person, it's on the N61 and we're only a half-hour drive from the Belgian Grand Prix circuit at Spa. So if you're going to an event there, you could always pop by here. Having said that, please bear in mind there is currently no legal way of accessing the old test track. And if you're watching this video in the future, who knows what will have happened to it. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.